Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're here at our modern retreat build again. I've got an interesting project going on today. We've got this circular hallway here. It's gonna be really cool. There are dropped trays here in this ceiling. And as you see, I've already started working on this, but I wanted to show you guys how I'm bending this trim, how I'm getting the measurements in terms of length to get my miters perfect on all these corners whenever I have to measure and bend the trim at the same time. And then as you see here up top, we've got some blocks wedged in here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I decided to use that method to get these pieces bent around these trays. Essentially, in the end, these are going to be stained, I believe a dark color, and then we'll have LED lighting above and then stone on this curved wall back here. So it's going to be a really cool detail when it's all finished up. So I knew I had this project to do. Whenever you have to bend wood, a lot of the way you go about it is going to depend on how tight your radius actually is that you're trying to bend. So as you can see here, this is what I ended up doing. This is clear poplar, and I took a 1x8, basically ripped it in half, and then we took out all of the meat behind it here. So I'm just left with a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. And my hope was that there would be a minimal amount of wood such that I would actually be able to bend it to the radius of this wall. As you can see here, as I press this up against this curved wall, it'll bend. There is a decent amount of spring back. So we'll talk a little bit more how you can clamp that on and keep it in place so that it sets and stays where it's supposed to. Now, when most of us think of sanding, we usually wait until after we've milled our trim to sand it. But in some cases, whenever you're going to be making weird profiles that are going to be small pieces or they're not going to sit flat on the table for sanding, it can make sense to sand your material first. So that's what I did here. I sanded the face side on all of this as well as both edges. That way it's done, and it's a lot easier to do it now than later whenever it's going to be an awkward shape. It's going to be smaller and not want to sit flat on the table. I just realized that I had my height wrong, so now I have to reset my saw here to a 1/2 inch high and a 1/4 inch off the blade here. All right, here we go again. I'm making my first cut right here, and then my second cut will be to remove all of this material here, so we're left with a 1/4 inch here and a 1/4 inch here. So this is what we're looking to end up with. To make this tall cut, I'm leaving my blade or my fence a 1/4 inch off the blade, and we're just gonna run it through there. Now this is almost a 3 inch tall cut, so I don't wanna try to take that all at once. So I'll make one pass at half of the height that I want, and then I'll make my second pass at the full height. One thing that I do like to do is I like to take my blade just a little bit past the corner just to ensure that it cleans everything out of this corner area. Sometimes if you get a board that's got a little bit of a cup or something like that in it, that wants to sit up off of the table or off of the fence, the blade might not remove quite everything. So I like to go a hair more to make sure I get a nice crisp corner in there. All right, I've got all of my trim milled up now. Again, ripped all of this out of 1x8s, ripped it down to 3 1/4, and then took a 1/2 inch out. That's gonna leave just a 1/4 inch here, which is gonna give me the flex that I need. If I needed this to be even more flexible, I could rip a little bit more off of here on this edge to reduce that from 3/4, a little bit less, but I think I'm gonna be fine with the radius that I'm trying to bend. I didn't video myself cutting these, ripping them, because it was a little bit sketchy. I actually have lost my riving knife for this saw. I always use the riving knife with my dust shroud, but I need my riving knife that is level with the blade to do these rabbited cuts, and I don't know where it's at. So that's a dangerous situation, because if you're pushing it through and the blade decides to grab a hold with a 5 horsepower saw, it'll shoot it backwards like a rocket. You definitely don't want it to hit you, but anything behind you is definitely in danger as well. Thankfully, everything went well, but I've got to order a riving knife ASAP, because that is a sketchy cut to make whenever you have just that much meat to work with and you're trying to push it through. It's a bad deal. So that's how we made these. Now I'll bounce you guys up to the future where I'm installing these. Nice thing also with this, I got some nice Jam Master block material here that we cut out of these, so that's always a plus. First thing we're gonna do, so this is my trim that I've got here, and I took a couple scrap pieces and I cut 45-degree miters on the ends. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up there to the tray and I'm gonna get these positioned and placed, and then I'm gonna tack this on with a pin. We'll end up with 2 pieces on both corners, so then I can measure from each corner and get my overall measurement. One of the key things that I'm watching for as I position these pieces up here is I want the miters to be perfectly plumb, and that's why I'm using 2 pieces. The framing and the drywall is not perfect. It's kind of out of plumb a little bit, so I'm using the 2 pieces and putting them together to get everything nice and plumb in position correctly. So I've got these 2 pieces here. My measurement is 38 1/8, which I've written right here. Before I pop these pieces off, I'm taking my pencil and I'm actually marking the inside of the miter right here on both ends. That way, whenever I have my final piece cut, I can put it up in place and I can look at those pencil marks and make sure that it's in the correct position. So one of the unfortunate things is because there's such limited space in here, I can't hardly get any kind of a nail gun in to do much. Unfortunately, on the last one, I was trying to get everything positioned, and I pulled one of these pieces down. So here I've got a couple screws with a block that's acting as a washer just to keep this clamped in place so that if I'm trying to pull on it, it doesn't pull the whole piece down, being that it's just 23 gauge pins holding it up right now. So how do we go about getting the length of a curved measurement? Obviously, if I tried to pull out my tape measure and just pull a measurement, I'm going in a straight line, so it's not going to give me the correct measurement. And I can't really try and press my tape to this curve to get an accurate measurement. So what I've done here, and it's worked out pretty well, I've just got a piece of scrap material, and it's a 1/4 inch thick. I ripped it down on the table saw. And I've got a 45-degree miter cut on the end so that it will align with this end over here. Now I've also cut some blocks. As you see behind me, I've got a bunch of blocks wedged in here. Those are not all cut to perfect length. They actually are cut with a taper of about 5 degrees on one side so that I can slide these into place and it'll create friction and pressure and push the piece in. So to get my measurement, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to align this miter on the end. If I can do that, I'll take my wedge in here, push that up into place. So that's locked this end in. I'll go ahead and add another wedge in here to keep it pressed up against the radius. Now I'm just going to take my pencil, and I've left this piece long here, so I'll take my pencil and just mark the outside miter on my other corner over here. And I can take this down and I'll have my perfect length of measurement. So as I was thinking about how I was going to do this project, I wasn't sure what the best way to actually clamp these pieces in place was going to be. Obviously, for using a bar clamp or something like that, that wasn't going to be ideal because it would take a bunch of clamps and I'm actually limited on the space in between. So I had two ideas. One, you already saw a little bit, was this wedge block. The downside to this is that it is possible that I'm going to damage this drywall a little bit. Hasn't been too bad yet. We always have drywall touch-ups, so I'm not too concerned about it using these blocks to kind of wedge things in place. Also, on this wall over here, we're going to have stone, so if this drywall gets damaged, it's no big deal. So it's went pretty well using these blocks so far. The other idea I had was to use washer head screws. So I've got these little GRK washer head screws, and I cut a bunch of small blocks here and drilled about an 1/8 inch hole through there. So what I can do then is put a screw in there, and I can just screw through my trim and kind of clamp it in place, and that works pretty well. Also, you want to use a block of wood like this because if you try to screw the trim in with just the washer head, it's going to sink into the wood and do a bunch of damage. On stain grade, I don't want that. So this block is acting as a washer to distribute the weight and kind of pull it in just like a clamp. Okay, so at this point, what I've found works best is to try to get one end situated as close to possible. So I'm going to go ahead and position this corner and not worry about the left end of the board here. So I've got that miter lined up pretty good on the bottom. I'll go ahead and take my wedge and insert that into place just to give it some friction. Try and hold it in there. And now I want to add another block in the middle. And that wasn't supposed to happen. There we go. So at this point, I'm really happy with how this miter is aligned down here, but I am a little bit long down here. Whenever I took the measurements, I added a 1/16 because you want to be a little bit long, but if you're too short, you're gonna have a gap on your miter and that's just not gonna be good. So what I'm gonna do now, I have this piece here screwed in. I'm gonna take that screw out, which will allow this end to come back, and then that miter will come into place perfectly and no one will ever know the difference. So at this point, with having tight bond on the corners, you want to try and work pretty quickly and get things situated. I'm fairly happy with how everything is lined up at this point. Unfortunately, since the trim is only a 1/4 inch thick both ways, that doesn't give me a lot of meat to nail into with pin nails. Combine that with the fact that I can't really get my pin nailer in there in some spots, makes it a little hard to nail. So we're really depending on the PL Premium that's on the back side of this to cure out and hold it in place. So I'm really comfortable with that, but that's kind of the process on what I'm doing right now. Now, this isn't much of a radius, and I mean, it could be a lot tighter radius, which would require more blocks or clamps. Being that this is 1/4 inch poplar, if I put one block in the center, it already kind of wants to conform to the radius. So I've got 5 blocks total. That's plenty for this. It's keeping it nice and tight up against there, and it's conforming nicely to the radius. So a little bit more to this story. I came into this house at framing stage before drywall, and the framer did not do anything special whenever he framed up these trays. It was very jagged along this outside radius. So I basically came in here and I had to redo his radius, and then I took 1/2 inch plywood and I bent it and PL Premiumed it to his framing all the way along this edge to try and get more of a gradual sweeping radius that was gonna be better for bending trim around. So I was able to achieve that. The problem was then the drywallers got here and they put drywall up, and with their roto-zip, they basically kept their roto-zip at an angle this way, so they had it cut off really bad, which meant my trim wasn't gonna cover. So I had to have them take the drywall down once, put it back up, put new pieces back up and recut it. Unfortunately, they still didn't do a great job, and for some reason, they didn't fill their screw holes and stuff, so they're gonna have to try and patch all these screw holes after the fact with my trim already up, but that's just a little bit of the reality of trying to work in the trades right now. So basically the exact same process for this outside piece. It's a little bit longer, so my template isn't quite long enough, but you still get the same principles apply. I'll go ahead and wedge this corner in. Now I've got that end in place, and I'm actually short by about 5 inches or so, but all I do then is I just take my tape, stick it in there, and I've got about 5/16 to the outside of my miter. I'll go ahead and make that 5 1/8. So we'll use this piece, and I'll just show you how I do that. So now cutting this, I'm just gonna go ahead and make a 46.5-degree cut on this end. I haven't talked about that yet. I'll show you why I'm doing that in a second. Now here's my template piece that I used. I'll take the outside miter, plop it right down on top here, align it on this edge. Then it's really simple. I'll just take my tape measure down here, make sure the piece doesn't move, and I'll mark 5 1/8. And that's now the outside of my other miter. All right, so I've got my miters glued up here. Time to try to fit these in place again. I'm gonna start on this end this time. Get that right where I want it. Take the wedge block. Oh, gotta love it. There. All right, guys, so last block going in, wrapping this thing up. Didn't know quite how it was gonna go, but I'm really happy with how everything turned out. All the miters are right on the money. It doesn't look like much now, but at the end of this job, we'll be sure to show you guys stone, stain grade trim, LED lighting up above these trays, and a really awesome steel staircase on the side here. It's gonna be a really cool area of this house. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you got any questions in the comments. Thanks for watching as always. We'll see you on the next one.